was loved by a beautiful wizard and a princess. Ryoko! It's kind of how I sounded on my tape, too. And I got that role, so that was Tenchi. And then ended up, obviously, being... that was a good 5 years of work. We recorded from 93 to about 97, 98, I guess it was. With the 3 feature films and all the spin-offs and the OVAs and everything. So. Anyone have questions at this point? Yes, right there.
Was there a lot of competition for the role of Tenchi?
You know, because I submitted a tape, I don't know how many tapes they listened to. I guess I never asked, never thought to ask. They picked me, so who cares? but I don't know that. It's that's one of the differences sometimes. If you go into an audition in person, you see all the other people, or you at least see a big sign-in sheet with all kinds of names on it, with all kinds of agency names, but when you submit a tape, you don't know how many they listen to. So, but I think it was a lot. Follow-up, yes?
Do you think it was more advantageous to submit a tape or be in person?
You know, that's a really good question, because people are people. We all have our... we make judgments, and even unconsciously we think things about people. We size people up as soon as we see them, because that's how we get most of our information, is visually. I have been to actual auditions for voiceover auditions, where they will set up a screen in the audition booth. So when you come in, you're behind a screen and you're on mic, so they don't see you, because they're smart enough to know that sometimes you may make assumptions about somebody, even unconsciously, that, oh, they're not right for this because they don't look right. Of course, in voiceover, of course, that doesn't make any sense, but we're not always rational beings. So I've seen that done, and I think that's a really good idea, actually. Put up a screen. So there may be an advantage to not being seen. Yeah. Any other questions about anything? Yes, in the back.
Do you meet the other voice actors, or do you do all the recordings separately?
That's a really good question, too. With anime, as with all dubbing, foreign dubbing, you're working alone. It gets kind of lonely business, actually. You don't very often... With Tenchi, it was a little different, because we really were kind of a family. Some of us knew each other already. Patria Burchard, who played Ryoko, was an old friend of mine from Chicago. In fact, I helped get her that role, because I got her to submit her stuff, because I knew she had a great voice. And she does have a great voice, doesn't she? She sounds great as Ryoko. And some of the other actors I got to know, because I guess that recording session was different. We would overlap sessions more. So you would see them going when you were coming in, and they would see you, and you'd get a few minutes to socialize. A lot of the times, like the Miyazaki films, I mean, I say I worked with Billy Bob Thornton and Gillian Anderson and all these wonderful actors, Debbie Reynolds. I never saw any of them, because you come in at your allotted time, and you go into a booth, and you're in there by yourself with a big monitor and a script with just the time codes on it, and they're running the monitor with the time code at the bottom, and you have to sync the lines. So you can't do that with other voices at the same time. It doesn't work. You have to do it individually. So on anime, you really don't get to meet them too much, unless you really go out of your way to hang out and make an effort to be there when other people are there. Yeah. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Whenever you started dubbing anime,
Mm-hmm.
were you surprised by any of the content?
That's another good question. You're great questions, guys. I was. There are cultural differences, and the Japanese sense of humor is a particular sense of humor. And there were certain episodes where, and I wasn't the only one. I mean, we'd be sitting there and watching what was going on, and somebody pooping in a jacuzzi, or it was like, I don't know if you remember these episodes, but it was strange sometimes. And the client would be in the engineer's booth, just laughing, hysterically laughing. I don't think that's funny. So some things didn't always translate. Some of it's odd. Most of it does, but there were times where it just, like, I don't think that's funny. But it's cultural differences. That's okay. Yeah.
Did you ever have trouble saying some of those lines?
Did I ever have trouble saying this one? Yeah, because you got to remember, and maybe most of you know a lot of this process. If not, just a real quick primer. In American original animation, they do the voices first, and then they animate to the voices. Or in Japan, they animate first, do the voices later. So they're not so concerned about lip syncing as we are. But when they send their stuff over here and we want to lip sync it into English, we're very particular about matching up the lip flaps exactly. But the lines don't always match up in an English translation. So they would do two scripts for us. They would do the first draft of the English version of the script, which would be a literal translation. And a lot of that just was kind of clunky and stiff, and plus it wouldn't match what the characters' lip flaps were doing. So then they'd give it to a polisher, and the polisher would colloquialize it and make it more American, maybe use some slang, and plus have to either expand or condense the amount of syllables to match what the character's mouth was doing. So sometimes that didn't always work. If it was a long expositional sentence, but the lip flaps were only four lip flaps, what are you going to do? So sometimes they would try to crunch things together or condense things, and sometimes it got a little awkward. So I can't think of any of the lines in particular, but yeah, there were times. It's like, I can't make that fit. I don't know what you guys are thinking. That's not going to go there. So sometimes it was. Anything else? Yes.
What was one of the strangest lines you've ever been asked to?
Oh, wow. One of the strangest lines I've ever been asked? I'd have to really think about that. I know there were some. I can hear echoes in my mind of strange things. I can't think of any. I'm sure it was Tenchi, though. I know it was Tenchi, but I'd have to really go back and look. But I know there were some strange ones. Again, a lot of it's a cultural thing, too. It's like, why is that funny? They'd have to explain it to me. Any other questions? Yes?
For the pronunciation of the Japanese names, was that something that they coached you on, or is it something you learned on your own?
No, they very much coached us on Japanese pronunciations, all of that. Because I didn't have any knowledge of Japanese or any experience or background with it. So I don't know that any of us did in the cast. So they very much coached us on pronunciation, make sure we got it right. Yeah, it was very helpful, obviously, very helpful. Yeah, other questions? Yes?
A small minor question. When you watch the Japanese version of Tenchi Muyo, did you try to match your own voice and personality to reflect the Japanese version, or the Japanese version of Tenchi's character?
Yeah, if I understand right, you're asking, did I try to match the Japanese actor of Tenchi? No, I never did, and I was not encouraged to.
Right.
They really wanted me to make it my own, and didn't encourage me to watch or listen to the original at all. Well, I take that back. They would play the original once in a while if there was some emotional content or some emotional element that they couldn't articulate, and then they would resort to that. But that was kind of a last resort. They'd say, okay, let's play the original, and you can hear but it was more for the tone of voice, not the voice itself, but the tone, the emotionality. So they would use that device sometimes, but never asked me to imitate, though, no. Anyone else? Yes?
What work have you been doing over the last few years?
The last few years, I've been primarily a theater actor. And I'm a company member at Regional Theater in Sacramento, California. But I've worked all over the country in theater. Done some wonderful things. Did an Enemy of the People with Ian McKellen. You guys all know Ian McKellen. That was a wonderful experience. That was in Los Angeles. I've worked with Alfred Molina and Robert Prosky, the late Robert Prosky. A lot of classical theater, a lot of Shakespeare, Shakespeare festivals, regional theaters. I've been kept busy that way. And since I left LA, they don't call me as much for voiceover. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind. San Francisco, there's some voiceover jobs there. There's a good market there, but I haven't done as much voiceover, mostly theater. Yeah. And some directing, too. Yeah.
What have you directed?
Well, let's see. The last thing I directed was a production of Neil Simon's Brighton Beach Memoirs for the theater company where I'm a member. That was wonderful. Tuesdays with Maury. Anybody know Tuesdays with Maury? The book? Or there's a wonderful play. I directed the production of that. What else? A play called Queen of the Remote Control that my lovely wife Catherine was in, as a matter of fact. My wife Catherine. Yay! Wonderful actor. So stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah. Other questions? Yes, in the back.
What was your favorite theater role?
I'm sorry?
What was your favorite theater role?
My favorite theater role? That's a great question. It's hard though, because they're so different. But Salieri in Amadeus is one of my favorite roles. I also had to do a one-man show about myself. Interesting story. A couple years ago, our theater, when the economy tanked, it hurt the arts as much as anybody else, and our theater was hurt financially. And so much so that we were supposed to do a play called Noises Off as the last play of our season. A very funny play, but it requires a big set and it's a very big show. We didn't have the money to produce it. And the artistic director of the theater came to me and said, in fact, we don't have any money to pay royalties for any play. Could you do something? I know, well, what do you mean, what? She said, I don't know, tell stories, something? So I said, wow, okay, well, I guess so. I took a day to think about it, and I agreed. I went home and I started typing. I just started typing in the computer and tried to recall every good theater story I could think of that happened to me. All actors have them. And a week later, I had 30 pages. And I showed that to her, and she gave me some notes and some feedback, and I did another draft. She gave me some more notes. I did a third draft. So in less than 2 weeks, I wrote a one-man show and put it up at our theater, and got very good reviews, 3.5 stars at the B, and was very successful and did very well. So that was that was one of my favorite roles too, because I had to write it and perform it and practically produce it myself. So me, I guess. I don't know. Other questions? Anything about voiceover? Anything about Tenchi? Yes.
I guess as an actor who's worked with other, actors on a stage, how is it different when you're sitting alone in a room and you have to develop a character as opposed to be able to react to other people giving lines and other people's personalities?
I tell you, it's can everybody hear the question? Okay. Everybody hear? Yeah. It's a really particular skill, and it's not something, for some reason, I just have a knack for it. I don't take any credit. It's just a knack I found out that I had. Because you got to remember, you've all done karaoke at one point in your lives, right? Whether you wanted to or not. Well, this is like karaoke. You're not only reading the words while you're singing and trying to stay on the tune at the same time, but imagine you've also got another screen with a character singing, and you have to match their lips while you're singing and reading the lyrics and staying on pitch and staying on the tune as well. It's rubbing your stomach and patting your head and dancing on one leg and whistling Dixie all at the same time. So it's really an odd little skill, and for some reason I just could do it, and they loved that. A lot of producers love that because I'm fast, so that saves them money because the studios are very expensive. So if you get good at it, they all want to use you. If you can do the lip syncing, do it quickly, but also come up with good characters and act. And don't forget the acting part on top of everything else. So it's completely different from being on stage and dealing with another human being face to face, eye to eye, and being able to play off each other and make it a little different every night because you're not exactly the same as you were the night before, and neither is the audience, and it's all can be very spontaneous and fun. That